The night she vanished, the world outside was silent. But inside one old house, something was still breathing. The neighbors said they heard noises from within, faint scratching like someone trying to whisper through the walls. When officers finally stepped inside, they were hit with the smell of rot, decay, and time. A hoarder's paradise turned into a tomb of forgotten lives. And behind one of those walls, they found her. The woman who had been missing for months. But what they didn't expect was that she had never really left the house. Police cameras captured every inch of the place, piles of trash reaching the ceiling, newspapers from decades past, rooms that felt like they had never seen sunlight. Everything looked abandoned, until one officer's flashlight hit something unusual, a section of drywall that didn't quite match the rest. Fresh paint, uneven texture. Behind that small mistake lay a secret that had been buried for too long. What they found that night would shock the nation. A real-life nightmare of obsession, silence, and a house that seemed to feed on darkness. This is the true story of how a missing woman was found behind a secret wall in a hoarder's home, and how even in death she still managed to speak. It began like any other missing person case. Rania Taylor, 28, a teacher known for her kindness, failed to show up at work one morning. Friends texted, called, waited. Nothing. Her mother reported her missing that same evening. Police searched her apartment. No signs of struggle, no forced entry. Just her phone left on the table, screen still lit, as if she had been interrupted mid-message. For days, officers combed through her social media, her calls, her last known location. Everything pointed to one place, the neighborhood she often visited for volunteer work, a decaying block filled with old houses and older secrets. Among them was one address that made every officer uneasy. A house belonging to a man named Jerry Holt, a recluse known for hoarding everything from newspapers to broken dolls. No one had seen Jerry outside in months. His windows were covered, his yard buried under junk. But when police knocked, he answered, soft-spoken, polite, eyes hollow. He said he hadn't seen Rania. He even let them look around. They found nothing. Nothing they could see, at least. The first time they entered, the officers had to wear masks. The air was thick, heavy, suffocating. Rooms were stacked with garbage so high that hallways disappeared into mountains of clutter. It wasn't a home. It was a labyrinth. One officer described it later as walking into someone's mind, a mind collapsing under its own weight. Every corner told a story. Rotten food, mold-covered furniture, and photos taped to walls of people Jerry had once known. In one corner, a small space was kept unusually clean. A single chair, a table, and a cup of cold tea. As if someone else had been living there. But what struck them most was a faint smell coming from the far wall. A smell not of trash, but of decay. The officer made a note, but with no proof, no warrant for deeper demolition, they had to leave. Jerry smiled as they exited. That smile, they would later realize, wasn't relief. It was pride. 2 weeks later, a neighbor called again. They'd heard a sound, crying, muffled, from inside Jerry's house. Police returned with a warrant this time. The stench was unbearable. They started peeling through the layers, removing boxes, furniture, piles of junk, until they reached the same wall from before. It looked ordinary, except for a new coat of paint, still slightly wet. When one detective tapped the wall, it echoed, hollow. The others exchanged glances. A crowbar tore through the drywall, piece by piece, until a small opening revealed what lay behind. There she was, Rania Taylor, her body curled in the fetal position, preserved in the cold darkness of the wall's cavity. Her eyes still open. A phone beside her cracked, and written on the inside of the plaster, in faint red marker, were the words, "She begged me not to close it." Jerry was silent at first. He denied everything, but the evidence was overwhelming. Fingerprints, hair samples, DNA, and most hauntingly, recordings from a small audio device found inside the wall. It had captured her voice, faintly calling for help, long after she'd been sealed inside. When investigators pressed him, Jerry's face trembled, and the truth poured out. He said he just wanted company. He claimed Renia had come to help him clean the house, and when she tried to leave, panic took over. "I didn't mean to hurt her," he whispered. "I just didn't want her to go." In that moment, detectives realized this wasn't a crime of rage. It was a crime of loneliness. A twisted, desperate attempt to stop time, to hold on to someone he admired, even if it meant building her tomb. The deeper they searched, the darker it got. Inside the house, hidden beneath piles of junk, they found old photos. Women, dozens of them, faces circled, names scribbled. Some were missing person cases from decades ago. Each room contained strange objects, a hairbrush, a shoe, a necklace. None of them belonged to Jerry. They belonged to the people he had collected. Forensic analysts confirmed traces of DNA from multiple victims, though only Renia's body was found intact. This was no longer just a hoarder's house. It was a gallery of ghosts, each wall, each object whispering stories of people who vanished, unnoticed, unsearched, unremembered. The courtroom was packed. Reporters, psychologists, and ordinary citizens who wanted to see the face of the man who built a wall around his crimes. Jerry sat motionless, eyes on the floor. The jury listened as prosecutors played the final audio recording, Renia's soft voice saying, "Please don't close it." The courtroom fell into absolute silence. His defense argued mental illness, claiming years of isolation had turned him delusional, but the evidence was too powerful. The judge's words echoed through the room. This was not madness. This was control. When the verdict came, life without parole, Jerry didn't react. He only whispered one line as guards took him away. "At least she stayed." Renia's mother stood outside the courthouse, clutching her daughter's photo. "She was kind to everyone," she said, "even to the one who didn't deserve it." Her words broke millions of hearts across the world. Media flooded the story, but for her family, fame brought no comfort. Every interview felt like reopening a wound, yet they spoke anyway, because silence was what had killed her the first time. That house, once filled with garbage, now became a symbol of secrets, of warnings, of how evil can hide in plain sight. When demolition crews arrived, the air felt heavy. Before tearing it down, police entered one last time for evidence. In the attic, they found a rusted tin box. Inside were Polaroid photos, victims, rooms, notes. On the last photo was written, "She's safe now." The bulldozers roared to life, crushing the walls, burying decades of horror. But just before the structure collapsed, workers noticed words etched inside a beam. "I never meant to hurt her." It was Jerry's final confession, carved into wood. As the dust cleared, sunlight hit the ground for the first time in years, a light that seemed almost sacred, as if the house was finally exhaling its secrets. Months later, the story became a movement. Murals of Renia appeared across the city, her face serene, surrounded by blue ribbons. A memorial was held, candles flickered, people cried, and her mother whispered, "You're free now." But the story didn't end. The documentary Behind the Wall released worldwide, reigniting public obsession. Some viewers claimed to hear faint crying sounds during the credits, unexplained, raw, real. Her death had become something more, a voice for the voiceless. Her tragedy reminded the world that sometimes monsters don't live in forests or dark alleys. They live next door. Years later, a new house was built on the same land. The family who moved in said the air still felt strange. Their children complained of hearing whispers through the walls, soft music and footsteps when no one was there. One night, The father found something half buried in the soil, a small broken music box. When he wound it, a faint melody played, and from inside, a folded note slipped out. "Please tell Mom I tried to get out." The handwriting matched Renia's. Maybe it was coincidence. Maybe it was something more. But everyone who heard that story felt the same chill, the kind that reminds you some walls never stop speaking. She was hidden behind a wall, but her story broke through it. And now, every time we walk past an old house, every time we hear a creak in the night, we'll wonder, what if someone's still there waiting to be found? If you believe some truth should never stay buried, subscribe, because the next story, might be closer than you think.